Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of the Feels Dropbox. In case you guys don't know, my name is Lauren. I am a 32-year-old single artist living in New York, and I struggle in my 30s. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. And honestly, going through the last couple years single and trying to figure out dating and trying to figure out my job, my life, and all my life decisions made me realize that I'm figuring it out, so is everyone else, and no one else really has it figured out. So I'm starting this series called the Feels Dropbox, where I asked a bunch of you guys to share your story, if you'd like, about struggles you've gone through or things that you've learned also in your 30s or in your 20s. Because guess what? We're all going through this life thing together, and you are not alone in any of your struggles. The whole point of this podcast-esque hangout is to just acknowledge that life isn't easy. Life is not easy. But that being said, we are all going through similar things, even if you're not from the same backgrounds, from the same countries or cultures or anything. Like, we are all basically humans doing human things. And I wanted to do this series to just highlight that, because in the time that I've been posting online, a lot of you have been sharing your stories with me. And I'm so honored to be able to hear some of them. But I wanted to make a little space here, a cozy, safe space here for everybody to hear those stories. Or it's also a space to ask for advice from your fellow community here on the internet and just get some insights on things that we go through. Because guess what? We're all going through something in some version of something. So this is basically what this space is for. And for each episode, I'm highlighting 2 stories for now. And I'm trying to figure out an experiment if this structure works for me and for you. So leave a comment if you have any advice or any insights or comments on what you think would help make this series even better. But for now, this is what it is, and I hope you see yourself in some of these stories. Feel free to share your advice for the original poster, but please remember to be kind. This is a free, no judgment zone for everybody, and it is not on you to tell somebody how to live their life, but feel free to share things that you've learned for yourself, because I personally don't like unsolicited advice. So it's very important to remember that everybody has made their own choices in their life, and their life is theirs and yours is yours. It's fine to share if you relate, but I think sometimes we get too caught up in trying to dictate how other people should live their lives, and that doesn't fly here with me. So please remember to be kind, and be kind to me too, because I am also figuring this out. We're all doing this together. So anyways, without further ado, here is story 1. Okay, this is the first story from Anonymous. I'm looking for advice. I've been dating my wonderful boyfriend for 2 years now, and he's truly one of the best. He's calm, emotionally stable, patient, and has a growth-oriented mindset. Anytime anything comes up, he always says, let's work on it. And we grow together, and as individuals. I'm very emotional, and he's very logical. And sometimes I feel our conversations don't click or light me up as much as I'd imagined or experience with friends. He makes me laugh even though our sense of humor isn't exactly the same, and he tries to be silly and playful even though that's not his default state. I see his effort and love, and I love and appreciate him so much. I'm just hung up on the conversation piece and wondering if that's normal in a healthy long-term relationship. This is my first. You won't always click with your partner, and some or many days will often feel flat. I'm introverted and don't have a ton of friends, so I often rely on my boyfriend for all our social interactions. Help, please, to calm my anxiety. So basically, her boyfriend is great, but then they don't always click in conversation, and she's asking if this is normal. First of all, I just want to say, it sounds like you're in a relatively healthy relationship, that you found an emotionally stable guy who's willing to sit with you in the mud and grow with you and be patient with you and talk about things with you through that. And it sounds like to me that he puts in a lot of effort and love into your relationship, and I think that is definitely something to commend. And I totally understand this whole doubt that you're having in your relationship, because I think that kind of always comes up at some point in any relationship, right? Even with your friendships, you can love something so much about one person, be friends with them for ages, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, wait, I didn't know that you're like that. And then you start doubting yourself or the relationship or your friendship. And I think that's just normal, because there's no way that any 2 people are going to be 100% perfect in every single way. You grew up in a different environment and then you had different experiences growing up. So even if you guys were very similar in a lot of ways, you're going to find differences. And that's just to say for every relationship, I think. I do think the fact that you're emotional and he's logical makes a lot of sense because that's what they say, right? Opposites attract. And personally, for me, that was also what I had in my previous relationships too. I'm someone who's relatively more emotional. I go with my gut a lot more. And I've tended to date guys who are more serious. And I think maybe that's a guy thing. They like to give you solutions to your problems. A lot of, at least my friends, just want validation. So that's not a gender thing. I think that's just how some people are. But I've tended to see that happens with a lot of guys, that they just want to fix the problem. And their girlfriends are always just saying, just tell me that it sucks. That's all I want to hear. And honestly, here's my take on it, okay? I think I would ask myself, is this truly a core incompatibility? Or is it something that's just like a growing pain? Like that song from Justin Bieber that he sings about growing pains. It is just very human and honestly just part of life that you will have differences and you'll think about it and you'll be like, oh, am I not with the right person? And that's going to come up in any time in your relationship. I don't think it's just like in the beginning. I don't think even people who are married for years and years don't ever think that, because can you ever know for a fact, for 100%, that this is the only person for you? Probably not. And I also don't think there's only one person for everybody. I think there's different people in different stages of your life that will be highly compatible. And then eventually maybe you grow and they won't be as compatible. But because you've grown such a heavy, strong foundation in the beginning, that's the thing that keeps you grounded together as a partnership. And then you can go through life differences in the future together as a partnership, even with all those differences. That's what I think relationships are supposed to be like. Honestly, I wish I had the answer for you here. I didn't have the healthiest relationship personally, but what I did learn from my relationship was that I needed to accept my previous partner for who he was, exactly as who he was. There were so many things I loved about him, but on the same side, that same thing I loved about him towards the end became something that I really resented in him as well. For example, he was someone who was very calm and very easygoing. And I felt like that was something that I really treasured in him. But then there were certain situations where we would be in a party, for example, and at that moment I would feel like, oh, he was a pushover, or he's letting people push him around and say whatever they want to say about him to make him drink more and all these things. And I just was like, I was in my head at that point frustrated that he couldn't stand up for himself and he wasn't more of an alpha guy. And now that I think about it, that situation in itself was something where I could have stood back and maybe thought, hey, this is something I love about this person. But in a certain situation, maybe I personally had issues with people not quote unquote respecting me personally, so that when I'm in social situations, I find it difficult when people are pushing me around. So when people are pushing him around, I thought to myself, hey, that's not something that I find attractive. But over time, obviously, I was immature and I was young and I didn't see it in this way. And now that I look back, I think to myself, wow, there are so many things about someone where they can be such a plus in one area and then it can feel like not a plus in another area. And that's the same to say for me as a person and you as a person, right? Like, I think everybody has that. Some of your strongest qualities become some of your weakest qualities in other ways. And it's just how you choose to see it, really. So it depends on how you feel about the situation. I think sometimes we do romanticize clicking a lot with people. And it seems from what you tell me, this is such a loving and healthy relationship where you talk about things and you grow with things. And I'm not saying you should stay with him, don't stay with him. It is what you decide at the end of the day. But I do think strong relationships are built on mutual trust and also even being able to talk about this. Bring it up to him if you feel comfortable, right? Something that you value is intellectual conversation and being able to have those conversations that make your mind kind of run. And if he's willing to talk to you about it and just see that's something you're valuing, he also doesn't have to be the person to give it to you. I think a lot of the times we expect our partners to be the person who like covers absolutely everything and gives us everything that we're looking for. Like, they have to be our best friend, our soulmate, our partner, our roommate. And like, one single person cannot be that for anybody, right? That's just a lot to ask. That's a lot of pressure on one person. I don't want to be that person for anyone either. even if I think if my partner came to me and had that conversation with me, I think, yes, I'd maybe be a little bit hurt that I wasn't able to give that to them. But if they were able to find that in their friendships, maybe you can definitely have those conversations with your friends, right? So being able to use that or like get that energy out with your friends, and you can maybe come home and share that with your partner when you get home, be like, hey, this is what we talked about. And then you can share about your day. I think that's what a partnership is, right? It's at the end of the day having someone to come home to and be like, this is how my day went today. Like, how did yours go? And then you get excited about each other's days, even if they're very different. And even if your interests are very different. I don't think you have to absolutely be 100% in each other's lives at all time. And you said the thing about feeling like that you're introverted and that all your social situations and like things that you're doing are with this one person. Perhaps it's like something you can think about to be like, okay, I don't want to rely entirely on this person for all of my social needs, because if there's something about the conversations that you want in life to be like more intellectually stimulating or just more exciting for you, maybe you can reach out to community groups around you, book clubs, anything that around you that you can make that kind of platonic relation somewhere else that you can expend that energy. And also you then won't rely on your partner for all these social needs, right? Like you'll be able to come back together at the end and be like, oh, I had such a good time with my new friend or something like that. Like it's just important to remember that your partner really can't be everything for you. I think I heard that in so many podcasts about dating, that like it's just something to remember, because we often try to romanticize that part of a relationship too, where we're looking for the one perfect person who can fit every single thing in our lives. No one can probably find that person. And it's healthy to be able to diversify all your emotional connections to other places. Another thing you could do is to have these conversations when you're doing a fun activity that stimulates your mind in some way. Like maybe you guys could go to a museum or go on a walk or watching a new show that's different from what you normally watch. Try to have those conversations steer in that direction. I don't know if that makes sense, because it's like that idea of doing something new to add spice into your relationship, but that doesn't necessarily always have to be sexual. It can also just be new conversations or like new activity that sparks something else new in your relationship. I don't know if that helps in any sort of way, but thank you for sharing your story. And I'm sure a lot of people do go through that. I think that's the difficult parts of relationships that a lot of us don't like to talk about, because we want our partners to be everything. We want to be able to show our friends that, oh my God, I have the perfect boyfriend, I have the perfect girlfriend, I have the perfect partner. And sometimes it's good to admit that we might have doubts, but those doubts don't always have to result in a full breakup or just, that this person isn't right for me. A lot of times the right person is going to be the person that you decide to work through all the things together with. And perhaps that is what a healthy relationship looks like. Okay, so thank you for sharing your story. I hope that helps. And if you guys have any comments or want to share some insights that you have for poster one here, put it in the comments. And yeah, I hope this helps. Okay, this is story number 2. Story number 2 is from Luca. By the way, guys, all these stories are anonymous. Or if you want to share your name, your first name, I'll give you that option. I have a Google form that I will link in the description below if you want to share your story. But anyways, here's the second story from Luca. I'm actually in therapy and I'm scared by what I could realize about myself, because as someone who I think always unconsciously isolates himself in difficult moments, not out of hostility, but out of habit, I always tended not to talk about my problems, but instead tried to find refuge in various media for comfort. I don't know if this is exactly everything, but I have hope in therapy, but I'm scared of the whys I will discover, because that will bring change. Ooh, interesting. Honestly, I love how self-aware this submission is. There's a lot of courage in admitting that you want to go to therapy and acknowledging that there's some things in your life that probably do need to change. And I think a lot of people would realize that, but actually making the active steps to go do those things takes a lot of courage. So props to you for going to therapy and facing those fears, even if there are a lot of fears. I get that. I totally get that, because I've definitely been through that. You're not alone there, for sure. There's a lot of people who delay therapy for this exact reason, right? They don't want to uncover the things that they have an inkling might be there. A lot of times I've realized in therapy, like, I know the things I'm going through. I am very aware of the things I'm going through. And this is, I'm talking about like in the beginning of my therapy journey. It's been like 15 years that I've been in therapy. But in the beginning, I had an inkling of things that I had to work on, but I didn't entirely want to face them. So I would blame the therapist for not being good enough, or I would blame the therapist for not being smart. And then I would say things like, oh, they just don't get me. And the thing is, I think part of me just didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to make those changes. I knew I was struggling in life a lot, but going to therapy and talking about it and then having to actually make those changes after sounded very exhausting. And I wasn't ready to make those changes at that time, too. So sometimes that fear in itself can stop people from going to therapy. So you're not alone for sure. I think part of me realized that when therapy did work was when I was ready to make those changes. Of course, it took a lot more time prior to actually starting those changes because I think those changes are scary. It's scary to act upon and uncover things that you don't necessarily want to learn about yourself. Like, you know that they're there, you acknowledge that they're there, and that's the first step of therapy, I think, acknowledging that they're there. But to make active changes in that takes a long time, and it also can be a very intense journey of high highs and low lows because you're basically uncovering more of who you are and facing a lot of things that happened to us when we were kids that we probably tried to cover up, maybe because it was traumatizing, scary, just not fun to think about. And I've had a lot of those moments where I just shut down in therapy. But what I also realized was the very healthy relationship that I built with my therapist was to be able to say, hey, I'm shutting down. I can't focus on this conversation. And the fact that I was building a relationship like that was so honest, I could be like, hey, I don't want to talk about this. Or I'm feeling really anxious right now because we're talking about this situation. And she was kind enough and considerate enough and professional enough as a therapist to create that safe space for me to be able to share that, hey, I'm shutting down, my body is shutting down, and I can't talk about this. But we would be able to open up that dialogue slowly and excavate through it. Like it's just like digging and investigating into your life and seeing it in very small chunks. Assuming and hoping and praying that you do have a good therapist, because there are definitely therapists out there who should not really be therapists, but there are so many great therapists. And let me just manifest this now. I want to say that there are so many also cheaper versions of therapy, and I think BetterHelp is definitely one of those. I have a lot of friends who've used BetterHelp, and so if anybody works at BetterHelp, please sponsor this podcast or my videos because I am such a proponent of therapy and therapy being so helpful for people, and everybody should go to therapy. It's not easy work. It is not easy at all. I have friends who go twice and then think it's, oh, I've done my work. No, therapy takes a long time because imagine if you're like in your mid-20s, 30s, 40s, you've lived the entire length of your life doing this one thing over and over again, thinking that one way over and over again. You've basically dug this path that is so deep, right? Because you've been doing the same thing over and over again. And then what you're doing in therapy is essentially digging new ones. You're like, wait, I know this path so well. It's so well worn. Why would I walk there when there's no road there? That's what I think therapy is, because you're basically starting a whole new kind of train of thought or like way to think. And that's what reframing your mindset is. It's just like thinking thoughts that you rarely ever think because your mind is so used to thinking this way. And this way maybe worked for you when you were 6 or 7 because your body was telling you, hey, I need to feel safe right now. So then your kind of mind just allows you to think this way. But when you grow up and situations change, things are different now. Your mind needs to think something else because you're no longer in that 6-year-old body that like didn't feel that safe anymore. And I don't know your life. I can't say stuff that you might have to go through or dig through, but personally, I do think there isn't anything that's too dark to dig through. Like, I think whatever you've been living with for the last 20, 30 years, right? Like, it might feel really dark to you, and it might be really dark. But at the same time, if you've carried this around with you and you've lived with this for the last 20, 30 years, bringing it to light won't make it any darker. Like, talking about it and being able to be aware and share it and bring it out into a space and talk about it is only going to make it lighter. That's exactly what light does, right? The whole idea is just like bringing something really dark into the light. It can't get any darker. That is just very common sense that if you bring something really dark into the light, sure, it might look really ugly. You might be like, whoa, I don't want to look at that because that looks intense. That does not look fun. But you're looking at it because there's light on it. and now you see it. And when you see it and you're aware of it, then you know how to deal with it. And you can always deal with it in very small steps. It doesn't mean you have to fix everything in 3 sessions. It also doesn't mean you fix it in 3 years even. Like, I say this all the time to my friends who struggle with self-love and loving themselves. I'm like, if you spent 30 years hating yourself, how do you think that spending 1 year in therapy is going to revert all of that? It's going to take time and patience and a lot of reps to constantly tell yourself things that you don't technically believe yet, but you will over time. But it does take a long time, and it requires patience, and it requires being very compassionate with yourself, because it is not easy work to look at some things that you maybe really are scared to look at. Something that always helps me think about it is that your body holds all this trauma, and your mind is easy to forget it, right? Like that book that everybody reads, I'll put it right here so that we all know what it is. I think that is very true. Sometimes our minds are able to forget a lot of things that we maybe have gone through when we were kids because we need to protect ourselves. That's all your body is doing for you. Your body is here to protect you. And it might have covered up all these things that you didn't want to look at when you were younger that caused a lot of pain. And pain is something that the body doesn't want to go through, right? Who wants to be in pain? Nobody. But going through therapy is like looking at that pain and being like, hey, I'm here. I see you. I acknowledge you. Let's work on lessening this pain. The way you lessen pain is it's going to hurt more in the beginning, right? For example, when you get a scab, right? You fall and you get a big scab on your knee. It hurts already. So you're like, don't touch it. Nobody touch it, right? Because it hurts. But then the only way to get it to heal is to clean it, right? And when you clean it, that hurts so much, right? Remember that feeling when you're a kid and your mom or somebody puts alcohol onto your scab and you're like, oh my God, that pain is so painful. But that's the only thing you can do to clean it, to make sure it heals properly. So yeah, it's gonna suck. Not gonna lie. It sucked for me too. But knowing that at the end of it, there's a goal and there's a version of yourself that you want to see healed and to be able to be fully yourself and just very authentically you, that is a journey that I think is tough, but is very worth going through. So maybe one way you could get through it is try journaling through it. Something that helps me a lot is when I record everything, because it becomes a fun adventure that way, right? So when you record the whole process, it becomes like a creative way to be like, okay, I want to see the changes. I want to see what happens. And the only way you can see those changes is by going through them. You can't just jump to the end. We're not in a movie montage. So what happens is you just start acknowledging and journaling down everything that's happening. And then you can be more clear about what's going on in your mind at that exact moment. And I think journaling always helps, just to put things down on paper. We're missing a lot of that these days, but journaling does help a lot. That's hopefully something that will give you some clarity about your whole journey in going through therapy and acknowledging the fears that you're going through. So I hope that helps in any sort of way. If anybody else has gone through fears about therapy, fears about things that you're working through currently and that you are also avoiding working through, just know that you're not alone. And if you have any comments about this or want to share your story too, feel free to leave it in the comments. As always, I hope this helps in any sort of way. Okay, and last but not least, I want to share this last story. I don't think the poster was asking for any advice, so I just wanted to share this story because I think if anybody relates to it or feels inspired by it, just know that you're not alone. Somebody else is going through struggles too and got through them. So anyways, here's the story. I graduated from college in 2016. That same year, I met someone who became my first love. We spent nearly half of my 20s together, growing up, navigating our first jobs, and dreaming of going to medical school and becoming doctors. Eventually, I entered medical school first, and he followed later. It was tough, but our relationship became my escape. I supported him, thinking we were okay. But when the pandemic hit, things changed. Our daily long talks turned into short check-ins. We argued more, connected less. Then one day, he told me he needed to take a break, to find himself, saying my life seemed too perfect compared to his. It shattered me. I didn't see it coming. I thought we were fine. But even though I still loved him, I let him go, thinking it was the best for him. I was left with so much love and no one to give it to. It took a long time to feel whole again. I tried to heal by keeping busy, exercising, studying, doing everything I could to move forward. I eventually graduated, started my internship, and began reviewing for my board exams. But I wasn't the same. I had lost my confidence and my sense of self. I failed twice. I was devastated. But I didn't give up. On my third try, I surrendered everything, my fear, my doubts, and gave it my all. And finally, I passed. I'm now a licensed physician. I was really unsure of what lay ahead, but after I passed the board exam, I felt relieved, as if the weight I had been carrying for so long finally became lighter. It was incredibly challenging. There were so many lessons about life, about love, before I could find a sense of happiness with myself again. Looking back, I realized I never really had the chance to grieve what I lost. I was busy surviving, trying to move forward, that maybe I skipped a step. And even now, I know I'm still not fully okay. I show people that I'm smiling, that I'm strong, but they don't see the moments I cry quietly, or the times I want to ask for help, but I don't know how. But here I am, slowly rising again. And it's true. Once you've hit rock bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. I'm learning to love myself again, even just a little more each day. I don't know if I'm ready to find love again, but I'm open to it, just not rushing. For now, I'm still figuring life out, and that's okay. Thank you for sharing your story. I relate to that so much as well myself. I think a lot more of us spend our younger years, especially, surviving and not living, and realizing that at that age and coming out of that sometimes it's like very jarring for sure. But I think it's very beautiful that you were able to see that and also acknowledge that you're able to rise again. Like, that takes a lot of strength. And it is true. Once you've hit rock bottom, there is nowhere to go but up. And I think that to myself sometimes. And even though the going up sometimes feels also rocky, because you can go up a bit and then down a bit, and then it's just like a constant up and down sometimes. But I'm really glad to hear that you're on such a good journey of healing and finding yourself and being open to love again, because it is hard. It is hard, especially when we've been hurt at one point or feel like there was a lot of pain in certain situations. So I do hope you find love again. I'm sure you will find love again, as we all will. And I think that's truly something that's just like divine timing, right? Like, it's not that we're ever not deserving of love. It is truly just sometimes luck, magic, a little pixie dust. And as long as we remain authentic to ourselves and continue to show ourselves love, I think that is really all you can ask for. And just know that we are so deserving of love, no matter who you are, where you've been, or the things that you've gone through. It took some time to get here, but I believe we all do deserve love. So if you are still watching or listening, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and let me know if you have any comments and want to share more, or just like it, share it, subscribe, do the things, because it does really help, and just getting more of these stories out into the world. I hope this helps anybody in any sort of way, and just remember that you are not alone. We are all doing this life thing together, and we are just humans being humans, and what a blessing to be a human being. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. I hope you guys all have a great day, and I will see you next week. Have a good day.